Hey guys, welcome to a new video, and in this particular one we are going to be looking at how we can build our own custom UI for allowing our users to authenticate in our application. Now, we saw in the previous video how the connect button UI or the connect button model specifically allows you to authenticate your users with very easily just by adding or passing a few props to the connect button component. And however, in some cases, you may want to build your own UI for your users because you may feel that you want to give your users a more conventional user experience by allowing them to authenticate using pressing a button on the page, or signing in using email without making them open the connect button model to authenticate. So it just depends on the personal choice and how you feel about building your application. But in this particular video, it's going to be a very quick demonstration of how you can build your own UI to authenticate your users. And thankfully, Thirdweb v5 SDK provides us a very simple and easy to use way of authenticating your users with your own custom UI. And it comes with a lot of hooks that allow us to achieve this. Now, without wasting much time, let's actually get started with this tutorial. Now, as you can see that I have opened up the Thirdweb v5 documentation, and I'm at this particular URL, and I'm going to be providing you with the URL of the documentation in the description, so don't worry about not being able to find this page. And if you scroll below, you can see we have the entire code that we need to get started with authenticating our using our own UI. Now, since I just want to demonstrate how this will be done, I'm going to be building a very bare bones page or application for this purpose, and you can always modify and improve the user interface as you like and feel, but this is just a demonstration to show you that it's possible to build your own UI for your authentication. Now, if we go back to the code base, as you may remember in the previous video, this is where we left at. We were like just implementing in-app wallets in our connect button UI, and we were modifying a couple of things. But in this video, we are building our own custom UI, so we don't actually need the connect button component at all. So we can obviously go ahead and remove this. Now, as I said earlier, we are trying to build our own custom UI for authentication, and what that means is that depending on the type of authentication you want to implement in your application, you might want to allow users to log into your application using either a social login option or signing in using email, phone number, or using passkeys. And it's very straightforward to do this. You just need to import a couple of things, but very broadly speaking, there are two ways of achieving this. The first way is that you simply add a button that says login using Google or any of the social login methods, and if the user clicks on that, you simply call in the Thirdweb function that allows you to log in using the social login method, whether it's Google, Facebook, Discord, etc. And the second method is using the form. So you might want your users to log in using phone number or email. In this case, you need to add an input for the user, and once they type in the email and they hit submit, you want to show another input field that asks them for their one-time password. And once user has entered the correct one-time password, we log them in. So we're going to be looking at how we can implement both of these methods in this particular video. So let's go ahead and get started with the very first one, which is simply logging in using a social account like Google. So I'm inside of page.tsx, and as I mentioned before, we are going to be using hooks. And the thing about hooks, using hooks in Next.js is that or any React application for that matter, you need to use them inside of the function component. And in this case, the function component is the home component, and we need to call the hook within this function component. The problem with calling Thirdweb hooks in Next.js is that you need to call them inside of a client function, and what that means is that we need to declare our page.tsx file as a client function or a client file. So let's go ahead and declare this, we are going to write use client at the very top just to get it out of the way. And now let's go ahead and get started with implementing our solution. I'm going to go back to our documentation, and if you scroll below, you can see there's a section called Authenticate via Google. And what this basically means is that you need to, as I said, you need to import the InAppWallet function. Yep, there it is. And you need to import the useConnect hook, which is going to initialize all of our state variables inside. I'm going to tell you in a minute why we actually need to do this, but yeah, basically we need to import the InAppWallet function as well as useConnect hook to connect to allow the user to authenticate using a social login method such as Google. So let's go ahead and start importing all the necessary stuff. I'm just going to copy this and paste it inside of our application right below the use client declaration. And the next thing that we need to do is we need to declare a function. But before that, let's go ahead and initialize the connect function, which we are receiving from the useConnect hook. Just like that, we need to call it inside of a function component. And the second thing, or the third thing that we need to do is to declare a function that handles the login process. Now what this basically does is that it's an asynchronous function that awaits the connect call, and we are getting the wallet using the InAppWallet. We are initializing the wallet object, and this wallet object allows you to connect to the preferred social account. In this case, we're using Google, and that's what's going to allow your users to connect to Google, and then you basically return this wallet instance. So without wasting much time, let's just copy this function and paste it right over here. As you can see, we are getting some errors, but we are going to fix that. The very first thing, it's we have written await, but it needs to be inside of an asynchronous function. So let's just declare this function as asynchronous. And client is undefined, which we need to import from another file. As if you have seen my previous video, if you have not, please go ahead and have a look at the playlist. We created a new client inside of our client.ts file, and the create Thirdweb client is a function that accepts the client ID. And remember one thing, if you want to use Thirdweb v5 SDK, you need to create a client ID from the Thirdweb website. So you need to create an account, and then you need to create a client ID. And once you have done that, you can initialize your client inside of client.ts file. We have just created a new file for creating the Thirdweb client so that we can use it globally inside of our application. That way it's much easier. And inside of the page.tsx, it seems that we're not getting any more errors. So we can go ahead and save this file. I'm just going to format this a little bit so that it's much easier to read. Another thing that I want to tell you about using your Thirdweb hooks inside of the Thirdweb client inside of client functions in Next.js is that for some reasons your create Thirdweb client is not able to understand environment variables. Now this may be an issue in Next.js itself, and I don't know the exact reason for this either, but the way to bypass this issue is to basically declare the client ID as a string value over here, which means that instead of taking the environment value from from the a.env file, what we need to do is we need to paste the client ID over here in between the double quotes. Now this may be unsafe, but we are just building a demo application, so for now this will do. So let's go to the .env file and paste the value inside of the client.ts file. There we go. We have pasted the value inside of client.ts. Now let's go ahead and continue with what we were doing. So after we have imported the handle login function and everything else, obviously another thing that we need to do is add a button. And what this button will do is it will say something like login using Google. Great. And once the user clicks on this button, we will add an on-click listener that calls the handle login function that we defined right over here. Cool. And do remember that you can do the same thing for other social login methods. And inside of strategy, if you just hover over this property, you will find all the different strategies available. For example, we have Google, we have Apple, Facebook, Discord, Farcaster, and Telegram. And these are all the social accounts that you can connect using Thirdweb v5 SDK. So let's go ahead and save this file. And let's go back to our application right over here. We need to refresh the page so that it syncs all the changes in the page.tsx file. Great. So now there's a button that says login using Google. And let's go ahead and see if this works. I'm going to click on login using Google and it takes me to a different page. Shows me a list of accounts that I can choose for logging in, and boom, I have logged in. Obviously there's no way to tell if I have logged in yet, so let's go ahead and implement something. Obviously there's no way to tell if I have logged in, so let's go ahead and implement a little something to allow us to see if we have actually logged in or not. Thirdweb basically provides us a hook called use active wallet connection status, and this lets us know whether the wallet is connected or not. So let's go ahead and import that as we have done already, and let's initialize status object or a constant with the use active wallet connection status hook, which will give us the status of the wallet, whether it's connected or disconnected, or if it's connecting. And within the JSX, let's also write wallet connection status. And I'm just going to display the status right over here. And let's go back to our application and let it refresh. Okay, so it says the wallet connection status is disconnected. And let's go ahead and try logging in with Google. Yep, as you can see that now the wallet connection status gets displayed as connected, which means that our wallet or our in-app wallet is now connected, which is great. And now let's go ahead and see how we can implement a second way of authenticating our users, which is by sending an authentication code or a one-time password to the user's email or phone. Now for this, obviously we will require input fields that allow the user to enter their email or phone number however they would like to log in, and for that reason we'll need to rewrite much of what we have done here. Okay, so let's go back to the documentation, and over here we are going to find a button. If we scroll below, we're going to find a heading that says authenticate via email verification. Now this is basically the second way of authenticating your users, and your users will receive an authentication code on their email ID, and after they type the correct authentication code, they will be authenticated into your application. Now obviously for this a button will not suffice. In order to build your UI, you will need to add an input field where the users can input their email ID, and another input field where they can enter the verification code that they received on that email ID, and if the verification code is correct, then they will be authenticated into your application. Now thankfully for us, Thirdweb v5 SDK does all of this automatically, and all we really need to do is import the Thirdweb functions and pass in the required values, and we are good to go. So in this particular code block, you can see that we are first importing the InAppWallet, as we did in the previous use case regarding logging in using a social account. And the only difference is we also import an additional function called pre-authenticate. And what pre-authenticate does is that this function sends a verification code to the email ID that the users provide us inside of the input field that they have submitted. And we use this particular email ID and pass it to pre-authenticate function, which then sends a verification code to their email ID. And then what we need to do is we need to verify if this verification code is correct. And in order to do that, we are going to require the connect, obviously wallet.connect function that we used in the previous case as well. The difference is that in this case, we also require the verification code value in order to verify if the user has entered the correct verification code, and if he has, then he will be authenticated and logged in to the application. So let's go ahead and see how we can implement this. We're going to have to rewrite much of what we have written here. I'm just going to leave out the status just so that we can still ensure that we are getting connected to our wallet. But we can go ahead and remove this button, for example, and we can, what else? I think that for now we are good. The only difference is obviously we need to add a new function, and in our case I'm just going to name it as send verification code. You can name it whatever you want, but if you name it something like send verification code, it's probably much easier for you to remember what this does. And it's going to take in an email as a string and just copying what's in the documentation, and you can do the same. And within this function, you'll need to paste a pre-authenticate function that we are calling from Thirdweb. And let's go ahead and do that. But obviously we have not imported the pre-authenticate function. Import pre-authenticate. Yep, that should do it. And again, we need to define this as an asynchronous function in order to take care of that error. And right over here, we are passing the email that the user will enter, and that's going to be the very first step for us. So let's add here an input element like that, and let's set the type as email. Let's also add a button here that says send verification code. And we'll need to add an onClick function, which basically calls our send verification code. In fact, I'm going to do it a bit differently. I'm going to set the email as a state. So I'm going to write something like const email set email use state, and it's going to be an empty string by default. And what we are going to do is we are going to turn our input field into a stateful field. So what we are going to do is pass a value as email, and we're going to write on change set email e.target.value. That should do the trick. So as soon as a user enters any value, or there's any change inside of the input field, it will also update the email value state over here. And we are already passing the email, So that's pretty cool, and it looks good. Okay, so once the user has passed the email, we need to send a verification code. And once the verification code has been sent, we also want to render an input field that allows users to input their authentication code that we can use to verify whether it's correct or not, and based on that we can log them in or show them an error. So another thing that we need to do is that we need to add another use state, another constant, and what this will do is that it will track whether our Thirdweb function has sent a verification code to the user's email or not. And the way to do this is to add, okay, first let's declare a const for that, and let's say verification code sent, set verification code sent, and we're going to declare use state as a boolean value, and we're going to set the value as false by default. And as soon as the pre-authenticate function is done sending the verification code, it's going to set verification code sent value as true. And in this case, once the code has been sent, we'll need to render a new input field that allows the user to input the verification code. Let's actually go ahead and add a placeholder so it's less confusing. Enter your email, and as for the second input, we need to put it inside braces where we can conditionally render this second input field, and this will only get rendered if the user has received the verification code. We're going to write verification code sent, and if it's true, we're going to render an input field right over here, and it's going to be type of text. We're going to write a placeholder, enter verification code, and exactly how we wrote the logic for email, we're going to write it for verification code as well. So I'm going to change this value to verification code and set verification code. Great. And let's enter other values as well. For example, value will be verification code, and let's also add the onChange listener that sets the verification code state. Great. And obviously, we don't need to render the button once our verification code has already been sent. So I'm just going to conditionally render this as well, and I'm going to write not verification code sent, or maybe something like this. If the verification code has not been sent, then you render this. Otherwise, you render a different button altogether. And this button will be called verify. So once the user has entered the verification code inside of the input field, I'm going to ask them to click on this button to verify if the code is correct or not, and this button will fire another function, which is the handle login function, which will check if the verification code is correct, and if it is, then it will log the user in. Now again, I'm going to add an onClick function, listener, and it's going to call the handle login function for us. Okay, great. So let's go back to the documentation and see how our handle login function is going to look like. Now, in the previous case, we were just passing the client as well as the strategy, but since we are now using email to authenticate, we are going to specify strategy as email. So let's remove Google and write email right over here, and it gives us an error because we need to also add a bunch of different properties here. The first one is email. Now this is the value that the user provided us in the first form, and the second value is the verification code which the user entered in the second form. And this function will again, as I said, this function will check if the verification code is correct or not correct, and if it is correct, then it will log the user in which case our wallet connection status should signal as connected. Now let's go back to our application to test if it's working or not. Now as you can see that we have an input field. It's a very ugly, I know, but it's just for demonstrating how it all works, just the logic, and you can always improve it later on your end. So the wallet connection status is disconnected as default, it's obviously, and over here you are supposed to enter your email, which where the verification code will be sent. So let's go ahead and write our email. For some reasons, the text style is in white, which is pretty strange. I might have to style my input field, I believe. Let's write the color as something dark, like black, and let's set the same style for this input field as well. Let's try in writing something. Great, now it's visible. Now I'm going to write in my email ID, and let's do that. Farcaster@gmail.com, and I'm going to send the verification code. Okay, so it looks like it's been sent. Okay, so as you can see that I have received the code, and in this case it's 714389. I'm just going to copy this and paste it inside of the verification box, and once I click on verify, then it should log me in if the code is correct. So let's see if it's working, and boom, as you can see that the wallet connection status is connecting, and it's now connected, which means that our verification code was correct and we have successfully logged in. Now that's pretty much it for this video. Obviously there's a lot more ways to log in or authenticate. For example, there's also passkeys, and there's also logging in using your phone number, and in the case of phone number, you are simply going to replace email with your phone number, which is very straightforward, and your strategy is going to be phone number instead of email in both these cases. But that's, again, you can use the same code in order to achieve authentication using phone number in your own custom UI. And the purpose of this video was, again, just to iterate, it was to show you how the login logic works in case you want to build your own custom authentication UI. And I hope that you found this video useful, guys, and in case you did, please feel free to subscribe. If you have any doubts, you can reach out to me in my Discord server, and I'm going to leave the link of the Discord server down in the comments below. I'm going to pin it, so it's going to be very simple, easy to see. And if you want to look at the code that we wrote in this particular video, you can also find it in the comment down below. I'm going to pin it as well, and I'll see you guys in a new video. Thanks a lot for watching.